Hello friends, this is Jordan, currently at the Monastic Academy, otherwise known as Maple. And I recently made a video comparing Maple back in 2023 when I was first here with Maple now. Now meaning since I was here from August of last year, and I went home for the holidays, but I returned and I'm still here. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be sharing a teaching that I learned and have also realized for myself because I think this is extremely relevant to what's been going on recently. This is a response to the various attacks that have been and accusations that have been made against Maple. And I'm just going to share from my own experience rather than just parrot what someone else says or I'm not just saying this to defend Maple or whatever you might think I'm doing with this video. This is going to be directly from my own experience, and I hope this teaching is received or considered. So the teaching is on a Buddhist term. The Buddhist term is called Prapanca, and what it means, it seems like it's very hard to translate. One well-known translation, I think it's Bhikkhu Bodhi's, is mental proliferation. But I would say that it's, if I could speak from my own experience, it's something more like maybe not my own words, but I've seen one explanation be like the mind constantly spinning stories. You said constantly explaining things, explaining and making sense and analyzing and assessing the self, others, and the world. What I have realized is that, so I have my own personal stuff. In Buddhist terms, you could call it just simple craving. Addiction. I mean, we're all addicted in one way or another. It's not necessarily to drugs or alcohol, or it could just be sensual pleasures and things like that. So I have a history of an addiction. Not necessarily, it doesn't have anything to do with drugs or alcohol, but it's just a more mundane or more everyday kind of addiction. And this addiction has been extremely insightful for me because I've closely looked into how my state of mind is so closely linked, related to my addiction, and how my state of mind is the thing that determines how I perceive the world, how I perceive myself, how I perceive others. And that is, at least my understanding of Prapanca, this perceiving of the world, seeing this, seeing that, at times when I feed my addiction, when I give in to craving, there's a sense of relief, a release of the tension in my mind and my body. And I have seen from my own direct experience how the world that I perceive is actually a reflection of my state of mind. And if there's a certain tension in the body, maybe it's not just one part of the body, but all over, I might feel it in the back of my neck or in my chest or in my belly or wherever, my hips. And if there's so much tension just all over, I feel like I'm suffocating. My body just starts to contract, and the whole, I've actually seen how this is related to my mind. My mind, it's like responding to the tension in my body. My mind starts to freak out. It starts to perceive the world or other people or whatever as, oh no, this is not safe. These people, this place are or is dangerous. Get out of here, run away. And this is actually very, very, it feels very, very real and convincing. Like, oh my God, I'm actually in danger. I better get out of here. And when my mind starts sending off those alarms, I even start to question the people around me. Like if they're my friends at Maple, I've actually seen this happen. I've seen Maple as an abusive cult. And I've seen my friends at Maple as like suddenly untrustworthy. Like all of a sudden I might feel emotionally harmed by them, or they might put me on the spot, or something might happen. Maybe someone else gets put on the spot. When I get to that place of perceiving harm done to me and or harm done to someone at Maple or other people at Maple, I start to question this place. I start to question these people. And I start looking for someone to talk to. Like, is there someone who I can talk to about what's going on? Like, I don't feel safe. I need to find someone to talk to. And I would actually say this just to add to my first video about the differences in the culture, 2023 versus now. In 2023, there were actually quite a few people who I felt like I could talk to. And it felt really validating to hear them comfort me, or basically they would tell me to take care of myself, and that in a way is validating my emotions, my experiences. Now, so this is Maple now, There aren't many people anymore. There's really no one anymore who is here to basically, what I now realize is coddling my emotions. Coddling or validating my experiences. So I say all this, and you might be wondering, or you might be thinking, that right there, Jordan, what you said right there is proof that Maple is abusive, is harmful. But I would push back, and I'm going to make this as clear as I can make it. Once again, I can use my own personal experience as the reason why I'm pushing back against such a claim that Maple is abusive or harmful. You ready? Well, simply put, when I persevere, when I continue practicing, despite what my mind says, when I don't listen to a single thing my mind says, suddenly, it's like I was under a spell, and the spell is a very dark spell that convinces me that there's danger. It's as if the spell, if I persevere and continue practicing despite what my mind says, and I would actually, in Buddhist terms, I would call this thing Mara, this voice in my head that, my mind that is constantly thinking that it's in danger, I would call Mara. If I just continue practicing, despite what my mind says, despite what Mara says, then all of a sudden there's a shift in my body and in my mind. My body, the tension in my body releases, even if it's just a little bit. In my mind, at the same exact time, roughly about the same time, it also relaxes and sees I'm not in danger. This is Mara. Mara, I see you. I know you. That's what's written in the sutras. Mara, I see you. I know you. You tried to deceive me, thinking that I was in great danger. But now, because I persevered and continued practicing, and Surya even told me, he tells all of us, he has such faith and confidence in us. He tells us we can do it. Don't listen to a single thing your mind says. Just trust this breath, trust this practice. Really do it. Because we're so identified with our minds, our emotions, our thoughts, because we think that it's somehow true. Well, this is what keeps us trapped in our suffering, our trauma. We keep buying into the story that we tell ourselves again and again and again. I think it's important that it be made clear that the training is set up in a very specific way. It's designed to get you to let go, to drop all prapanca, cut right through it. Because I can say from my own experience, whenever I truly buy into my prapanca, these stories, these thoughts, that's when I start suffering. That's when I become untrustworthy. That's when I am likely to perceive Maple as a scary, abusive place. But if I just stay right with all of that, this tension in my body and this prapanca, these stories, these thoughts in my mind, then, I've seen this during the most recent retreat. I saw this. I saw it very clearly. I was under this spell cast by Mara, and if I just stay with the practice and say to myself, like, Mara, I see you, I know you. No matter what you say to me, I will not stop practicing. And you just persevere like that. And actually, I would even say that maybe you gain insights. No matter what insights you gain during any retreat, don't cling to them. Just keep on practicing. That's the most important thing. No matter what. Because maybe during a retreat you have some sort of realization, like maybe Mara just sounds the most convincing alarm bell. Like maybe you actually have this quote unquote realization that Maple is in fact causing harm to me, to others, whatever the mind is saying, whatever Mara is saying. And if you can keep on practicing even when you hear that most convincing alarm bell that Mara is ringing so loudly that you can't help but see it as a realization, if you can just keep on practicing even when there is that alarm bell, then that is courage. That is true courage. Don't buy into a single thing that Mara tells you. And you really have to investigate, your own direct experience, because I must say, first of all, let me just say this, make this point before I make my next point. My first point is Maple is not for everyone. If you come here with a history of trauma, or if you have some own healing that you need to do, you will have a pretty miserable time here. And I'm just being very blunt about that, because the next point that I'm going to make is, if you come here and you feel emotionally hurt by just the culture, if you feel emotionally hurt by the way the culture is, that is not Maple's problem. I would actually say that's exactly why you should train here. The whole training is to get you to face and practice through, if that's the right way of saying it, facing the discomfort in our bodies and the confusion in our minds. And this is so much easier said than done, but we're so conditioned to believe that it's important that we feel comfortable in our bodies, and it's important that our minds understand. And you could make emotions a part of it and say, like we are so conditioned to believe that treating others with respect means validating their emotions and experiences. But I would argue that this belief that we need to validate each other's emotions and experiences is what is keeping us trapped in this prison, this mental, emotional, I'll just say prison. We are constantly chasing after what is pleasurable and avoiding what is painful. And this is not what the Buddha taught. He did not say to coddle emotions. And this is what I had to realize after leaving Maple in 2023, that all those times when I felt very hurt and confused or whatever it was, and needed someone to coddle my emotions, at that time it felt helpful. And then I realized this is actually harmful because it's not getting me out of this delusion, this prison that treats emotions and all that, or the needing to be validated as, the self. We were all raised in this culture. Well, I'll just speak for myself. I was raised in a culture that treated emotions to be my identity, the thing to cling to. And if someone says something that I don't like, and if I'm identifying with that thing, then I feel attacked. I feel harmed because I identified with my emotions. And this training really challenges you to get out of this prison of constantly identifying with these emotions and this need to be validated. There's one other example of Prapanca that I want to highlight, and that is clinging to Prapanca about Soryu himself. As people have seen, Soryu can seem a bit bipolar. At times, he seems very nice and very compassionate, like he's on your side. However, you'd see it. And then there are other times when he almost seems mean, like almost like shaming you or putting you on the spot. And maybe this is not just how he treats you, but how he treats others. And in your mind, will start coming up with stories about Soryu based on what it sees. So one moment, Soryu is so nice. Maple is such a great place. I feel so at home here. And in your body, you might feel very relaxed, and I don't know. That's just my experience that I'm sharing. And then there are other times when Soryu is very almost harsh, and you almost feel like you're not in a safe place. And you keep going back and forth between so nice and so mean. And the real challenge is, when are you going to stop clinging to any Prapanca about anyone or anything? Because that is your big opportunity to be truly free. If you really trust this practice, if you really trust this breath, then you won't believe a single story that your mind makes up about Maple or Soryu. And you won't even think, Soryu is so nice, because you really trust your practice. And when you really trust your practice, you know what kind of practice, what this training really is. Please understand that if you come to Maple expecting a pleasant experience, then you will have a miserable time here, because you really need to just cut right through this Prapanca, to go beyond pleasure and pain. You need to endure, to truly endure whatever pain, it could be emotional pain and confusion, arises. I have actually experienced that myself, this incredible pain and confusion. And I actually almost quit. It was during the most recent retreat that I almost quit. I almost gave up. And I even told Soryu in an interview, I had thoughts about quitting, but I refused to give up. I'm going to keep going. No matter what, I'm going to keep going. And I kept going. And what do you know? The spell that I was under just dissolved. And one last thing that should be made clear is that the people at Maple are not perfect. We mess up, we make mistakes. And in fact, I would say that because we make mistakes, that we unintentionally cause small amounts of harm. But just know that this very harm that I'm speaking of is the same harm that occurs, that happens between siblings, between parents and children, between spouses, between friends, just in general. It's not something that just happens in Maple. It happens everywhere. It happens. We're not perfect. We're not claiming to be fully enlightened. You know, most of us at Maple are actually far from enlightenment, but we use this practice to work through our afflictions and our untrustworthiness. And I think it's important that we be mature about this and realize we're not perfect, mistakes happen, and I accept it. Even if, I could actually use Jesus Christ as an example of this. It's a rather extreme example. You might think it's too extreme of an example to use for this video, but I'm going to use it anyway. Jesus was crucified. He was crucified. And did he complain? Did he protest, or did he resist what was happening to him? No. He endured it. Now that is maturity. And I'm not just saying this to spiritually bypass or anything. I'm not saying this to excuse Maple from any of the mistakes that it's made, because of course it's made some mistakes, but if we are to be mature about this, we should take responsibility. We should not be in this victim sort of mind, this victim mentality of, oh, this person did this to me, Maple did that to me. And it's very hard to know how to take responsibility, but we have to endure a bit of our suffering, just like Jesus did. I'm not Christian, by the way, but I think this teaching is still relevant. And we need to forgive people who have harmed us. Sometimes we need to stay in a relationship, even with those who have harmed us, even while they are harming us. Just leaving and calling a place or a person abusive is not always the right way of dealing with this. Maple does take feedback. Again, I've experienced this myself. this Prapanca about Maple will say things like, oh, don't say this to Maple. Don't give this feedback to Maple. How will they won't receive it well. That's just your mind making stuff up. Even if it happened in the past that you had a legitimate concern about Maple and you gave them feedback and they dismissed it, that does not mean that you can start clinging to Prapanca about Maple. You know, if the stories that your mind makes up are about Maple not being open to feedback, then that's just clinging to Prapanca. You're just believing a false reality that you can't prove exists. How do you know that they are not open to feedback? Just because they dismissed one bit of feedback that you had doesn't mean that you should start thinking, oh, I shouldn't give feedback anymore because they're just not going to accept it in the end. That is not the case. You need to see through this Prapanca, not just believing everything your mind says, not just believing everything Mara says. And this is something, again and again, to look closely at. And this is the reason why we need to continue practicing all the more. You know, the more your mind says, this is a cult, this is an abusive place, this is dangerous, that should be the reason to practice all the more, to really investigate what is this mind that is saying all this. Because, you know, I'll go back to my own example. When I really stayed with these stories, these thoughts, this tension in my body, and just kept on practicing, not buying into a single story, the spell that was cast by Mara was just dissolved. It put an end to this sense of danger. It cut right through it. I saw through it. I saw no one in the world. It's impossible that anyone in the world can truly be my enemy. There is a simile or a metaphor or analogy that I could use to make this point about clinging to Prapanca even more clear. So imagine you are a painter and you've just painted a very terrifying, realistic painting of a monster. And now you should know that this is a painting and not an actual monster. And rather than admitting it and understanding that this is just a painting, you scream and you cry out, get everyone's attention and say, help, there's this monster out to get me. And you're really hoping that people will see the monster and save you or something. But these people aren't stupid. They can see right through this painting. They see this is not a monster. This is just a painting. And they even tell you, like, what, are you crazy? You fool? How can you be afraid of your own creation? And they basically call out your delusion, which is the most compassionate thing they should do, to save you from your delusion. And rather than admitting it and understanding what they're saying, you go even further and you attack them and you accuse them of gaslighting, and you claim to have experienced emotional abuse, and it just becomes this huge drama. You know, this is what it's like to train here. You have to face the fact that your paintings, your images, are your own creation, and are not real. Otherwise, you will hurt yourself tremendously, you will suffer, and you will hurt others as well. This needs to be understood because we live in this world where everyone is reacting to paintings. And it has caused a tremendous amount of suffering in the world. Now, we here at Maple are dedicated to truly face these paintings and see them as they truly are, just paintings. They are empty. They are not real. They are not substantial. The world is not out to get you. In fact, you're out to get yourself. And then when you realize this, then you can better serve the world. So, as I said in my other video, we are offering this special training opportunity right here, right now. It will be a cohort of 12 people. The training will start on August 7th and will go until November 7th. So I'll put a link in the description below where you can apply if you are truly interested and dedicated to this mission. And if you have to understand what this training is all about, you have to understand what you're signing up for, because too many of us sign up for this and then we turn away before the real challenge comes up. We have to face the real challenge. We can't pretend, we can't fake it, we can't chicken out or turn away at the last minute. We have to face this, not only for our own sake, for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all beings.